Welcome to Lunch and Learn with Industry. Our talk today is Life and Times and Careers at a National Research Laboratory by David Manz and Jessica Smith from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our fifth Lunch and Learn with Industry. If you missed any previous presentations, they're all online. And if you Google WSU Lunch and Learn, you should be able to find them pretty easily. So my name is Greg Zweigle. I am not the speaker. I work at Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories here in Pullman, and my job is to introduce the speaker. So we have two speakers today to discuss their work at a national laboratory, and it's going to be really interesting. So David Manz, Dr. Manz, I'm going to just give a really brief segment of their bio, just so you have an understanding of who the speakers are. David is currently a chief cybersecurity scientist in the National Security Directorate at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and PNNL, as you guys know about that, it's here local in Washington. He leads a team of a dozen engineers, scientists, and support staff. He has a BS in computer science and information science from the Robert D. Clark Honors College at the University of Oregon, and a master's degree and a PhD in computer science from the University of Idaho. And David is an adjunct professor at Washington State University. Then also we have Jess Smith. Dr. Jess Smith is a cybersecurity research scientist, also at PNNL. Dr. Smith has a decade of experience working for both the government and industry after completing a master's and bachelor's of science in computer engineering at the University of Idaho. She earned her PhD in computer science from Washington State University while working full-time. Her dissertation explored methods for ensuring supply chain integrity, particularly important nowadays. She has her CISSP and CSSLP certifications and is a member of the IEEE and ACM. So before we start, I'd like to make a brief advertisement for the next Lunch and Learn, which will be in 2 weeks on Friday, December 4th. This will be Troy Coleman of Puget Sound Energy, talking about his career experiences, recently graduated from Washington State. So, if you feel like the power industry presentation isn't related to your career plans, you still might find it interesting. These Lunch and Learns really have included a lot of great advice and are applicable pretty much to any career path. So join us in a couple of weeks, and it might be snowing anyways, so you might as well come to the Lunch and Learn. With that, I'm going to hand it to Dave. I think Dave is going to be our first presenter. And we're going to leave time at the end for questions. So you can ask questions anytime in the chat. And you can also ask questions verbally if you want. Thanks, David. Take it away.
Great. Thank you all for taking the time. Sorry, I've got a new webcam, and I don't think the quality will be great, but you'll stare at the slides more than me, I hope. So first thing is, Jess and I are both in cybersecurity, so we're going to talk a lot about cybersecurity and share our experiences, but we definitely tried to bring a larger perspective to this conversation. So please enter in your questions in the chat, and we'll definitely save enough time at the end to have a conversation. Really appreciate that introduction. Thank you. Here's some photos just for your reference, but yes, we both are in the cybersecurity group. Jess leads the Prevent and Protect team, and we'll get into some more details on the various capabilities in a moment. So I wanted to start at the beginning. I think it's important to kind of put the context. So we are from the Pacific Northwest National Lab, 2 hours away, depending on how quickly you like to drive through Colfax. And it's important to point out that there are 17 national labs. We are an Office of Science National Lab, and that's really cool because there are different offices in the Department of Energy, and they all bring a different focus. And here in the Northwest, we are the Office of Science Lab. So that really colors all the work we do. So we might do work for energy or environment or national security, but we do that with the capabilities of a science lab. And that brings a lot to our sponsors when we do work for them. Did want to point out that if you love the Southwest or you love small towns, Department of Energy has a tendency to put their labs in what were small towns at the time. Highly recommend you consider, of course, PNNL, but any of the national labs because they each have their own strengths and interests. So definitely want you to consider national labs as an opportunity for an internship, because I have to say it's great on your resume, but also it's a great experience to learn what research is like at a national lab as opposed to a university. Maybe you want to go on to grad school, maybe you're not sure. Maybe you don't want to be a professor, but you want to get a PhD. Well, there's options for you. So I encourage you guys to consider national labs. We're the closest and the best. We are a national, international, and regional source for scientific research. This is a nice shot of our campus, but we're really pleased to be in the Northwest. I think you guys might get this too, but when you explain that you live or go to school in Washington, people always think of Seattle, but the east side of the state is clearly different. Moscow, Pullman, and the Palouse is beautiful. I spent a long time there. And I think the Tri-Cities is very similar in climate, but we have less snow. And it's slightly warmer, so you don't have to drive up the hill with the snow if you come intern here for the summer. But this is our campus. We continue to develop and grow. It's a nice green open area for collaborative research. It's nice to show where we are. I will point out the hole in the ground right here. We're going to now have 2 buildings in the northwest corner of the screen. So we're actively growing and adding new capabilities. And it's an exciting time, an exciting place to be. So we'll have an obligatory org chart. We've got an obligatory numbers page, but we do $1 billion worth of work. What that really boils down to is labor. We do a lot of work for a variety of sponsors. So if you look at the right-hand side, you can see we do fundamental science work, like I was describing. I mentioned energy environment. Most of our work is national security. Deb Graccio, who's here with us, is the Associate Lab Director for the National Security Directorate. And national security accounts for about half of all the work we do at P&L. And that could be for the Department of Energy, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security. But again, we bring our skills and strengths in electrical engineering, materials science, energy and environment into our national security. And so one of the soapboxes I'll get on is I think this is a great place to work for a couple of reasons. But the first one is we are so heavily matrixed. That means I think some universities are better than others, but you'll have a physics department, electrical engineering department, and you'll stay in those departments. Whereas P&L, we have those equivalent departments. We are constantly collaborating in matrixed organizations. That means if you need a physicist for a day, a statistician for an afternoon, you can bring those skills and strengths. And that means you, as the experts, get to work on a variety of really fun projects. So I think that's one of the strengths of our lab, and you can see that in the diversity of our staff and our work, our publications, and our inventions that we create. And so I just wanted to give you guys a snapshot for us as a business, and this is really exemplar of that. So while we will jump into cybersecurity in a moment, I did want to make a mention that we are a broad laboratory with deep areas of expertise and work going on in these 6 areas. The first one is user facilities. This is kind of fun and different. This is an area where we, on behalf of a government sponsor for the Department of Energy, steward major scientific institutes or facilities. We have facilities like this picture here that does atmospheric radiation monitoring all over the world, from airspace, where we actually fly an airplane, to fixed devices like this, where we monitor the air. But we collect an immense amount of data so that we can better study and understand background in environmental and other sources of radiation. Similarly, we have an environmental molecular sciences laboratory here in the Tri-Cities that has a variety of world-class instrumentation. And so people from all over the world were proposed to come do work on these instruments. So that's a really cool thing to steward on behalf of our sponsors. But then we do specific research in bio, earth sciences, chem, nuke, materials, and also advanced computing. Something closer to my heart is the work that we do in high performance computing, advanced networks, wireless communications, hardware systems, embedded systems, and of course, cybersecurity. So as much as you'll hear a particular slice that represents Jess and myself, I want you to realize that at jobs.pnl.gov, there's just a plethora of internship, RA, postbac, and full-time employment options in a variety of areas. So would love to hear your backgrounds and your interests. Are you looking for an internship? Are you looking for full-time employment? And then what your area is, because I think we're happy to have a conversation offline if you're interested in any of these areas. So something I want to briefly mention is what is a national lab? Well, I say this, in a good day, a national lab is the perfect blend of academia, industry, and government. We get to work on problems that are only the government's, whether it's national, economic, or environmental security. We get to work with the big problems that confront us as a nation, and we get that from our government sponsors. But like academia, we have brilliant people using their sharp minds to apply to these hard problems. We really want to innovate the novel and new approaches to answer the hard questions and develop the solutions for hard problems. And so we get that with academia. And then from industry, we get the focus to actually deliver. We can't just write an awesome paper. We can't just admire the problem. We actually have to have impact. And the way we have that impact is through tech transfer and innovation. So we have done 6 R&D 100 awards, 88 patents, and we continue to license. And our group is a great example of that. We have recently licensed several key technologies to defend the power grid to a variety of partners, including Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories. And so the way our staff get gratitude and satisfaction is to see a cool idea get worked on for several years, prototypes, failures, successes, and then we partner with someone in industry to actually transition that out into the wide world and make a difference. You can see the project you worked on protecting, monitoring, observing all around the world. And that's a really gratifying thing to be a part of. And that's because of our ability to work hand in hand with industry and transition our ideas out of the lab into industry and to government hands.
And from the scientist's perspective, it makes it a whole heck of a lot of fun too, being able to see that growth, that progression, but also being able then to say, okay, well, I've done this thing. This is awesome. But you know what? We're at a point where we transition it off, and now I get to do the next great thing. So from a worm's eye view, it makes working here very different, and in my perspective, a whole lot of fun.
So here's the obligatory org chart. I just wanted to share with you guys the breadth of work we do in cybersecurity. We do evaluation and assessments, red teaming, penetration testing. We do basic science and experimentation, which is the team I was leading. We have test beds and capabilities to do cyber physical experimentation. We look at resilient systems. I think resiliency is a great way to look at cybersecurity in context. Secure software, secure architectures, identification, discovery. Jess leads our prevention and protection group, and then analytics and insight. And so we'll cover these at a high level, but I just wanted to pique your interest on any of these areas. I will also mention that we have almost 100 staff, 77 scientists and engineers, but then 17 interns, research associates, post-bac, post-masters, post-PhD. So we definitely have a variety of ways to engage. But I also want to mention, this is not all computer science, electrical engineering. That is a lot of what we have, both in terms of software engineering, computer science, and electrical mechanical engineers. But we also have other domains and disciplines, from political science to social sciences, because cybersecurity is inherently interdisciplinary. So just because you think you might not be interested in this, one, I'm sure there's something at the lab you are interested in, and two, it's a very interdisciplinary area. So I'd encourage you to think about this with that mindset. All right. So this is an example that I've applied to cybersecurity, but this is really the way our directorate and our lab likes to think about things. Mission-driven research and development. What that means is we actually don't just do research. We don't just do operations. We have a balanced portfolio. So that means you might be personally interested in working on hard questions and, looking at cosmology or something very fundamental. And there's room for that. But what we do at the lab is we couple that with those who are engineers who like to solve really hard problems. How do we develop the next detector for background radiation for cosmology? How do we develop the next technology to make it more precise or faster, right? Those are engineering problems that still take innovation and research and development, but that's in the applied engineering space. And then finally, well, there's operations. Well, I mentioned our user facilities. So we actually operate these cutting edge devices for a variety of applications. And so to me, it's very important to have a balanced portfolio, because if all you did was just research, you wouldn't ever be informed by operations. You wouldn't actually know what the end problems are, what the end user's needs are. But similarly, if you just did operations, you would never innovate. And without engineers, we'd never get anything done. And so this pipeline is crucial for how we do cybersecurity R&D, but really how we do any R&D at the lab. And these are just 3 examples I've got at the bottom of the screen, where we actually are taking a fundamental in biosciences and applying it to identifying malware and threats in cybersecurity. So I just want to point out that it's important to have this healthy continuum. And so I think another way you could fit in is somewhere along this lines, whether it's the basic or the very applied. All right. So the first area, and now we're going to touch on about 5 topics in cybersecurity, just to hopefully pique your interest. Cyber situational awareness and defense. Really, this looks at fundamentally, how do we detect what's going on? Now, you could think about this in a biological or physical process, and it's very similar in cybersecurity, but here's how it's worse, and it's more of a challenge. In cybersecurity, you have 2 things that are very different in, let's say, medicine. Medicine, you've got horrible COVID, you have cancer, and you're trying to detect it quickly and rapidly, right? That's a challenge. That's a research challenge. But in cybersecurity, we're trying to detect malware, badness. But there are 2 things. One, the environment is changing all the time. The human body is slow to evolve, right? And so it's consistent across organisms and over time. Whereas cyberspace is changing all the time. Look at the proliferation of 5G, Internet of Things. You know, a decade ago, we were talking about cell phones, right? You know, a couple decades ago, we were talking about powerful laptops, right? This terrain changes every 18 months when a new product comes out, a new innovation, cloud. All of these things make the fundamental terrain change so quickly. That just makes it harder to stay abreast and to keep up with. So that's the first thing that makes cybersecurity a fun challenge. The second thing is the intelligent adversary. Well, the adversary is going to be smart. They're going to try to hide themselves. They're actually going to use intelligent human agency to disguise them. So when you're looking at the supply chain, you don't see them in the hardware because they're trying to hide. So it's a game of cat and mouse. And so again, that's why cybersecurity fundamentally has these inherent challenges. And that's one of the joys of looking at situational awareness and defense. How do you get better at detecting the malware, the attack, the buffer overflow, than the adversary, the attacker, does at creating those vulnerabilities? So you don't ever win. It's an arms race, truly tit for tat. But the way we look at this is through wide area situational awareness and systems of systems. We like to take a step back and say, well, what is your actual mission and function you're trying to do? How do we monitor that so we can ensure you can continue to keep the lights on for power, or keep the information flowing for a critical social media application? And that's really where we bring our expertise in analytics and monitoring to situational awareness. And we can then inform government sponsors or partners of what we have found and what we recommend. And so this is a very fun, very important area of research. Visualization and analysis. This is more research on how do we present data. I think something that would amaze you is the terabytes of data our analysts have to look at every single day, right? How do they do that without becoming totally overwhelmed? And the answer is through powerful analytic tools like you see here. gone are the days of staring at a spreadsheet or Excel trying to look at data. But unfortunately, a lot of people in industry still use that as their primary means of triage and detection. We have a whole other group here at the lab that does visualization and analysis. We have a whole other group that does machine learning. What we can do for our needs is take those experts and bring them in to help us solve problems in cybersecurity network traffic or in logs and events from their SIM or the tool that manages the network. And so what we can do is apply these techniques to visually represent the information so we can actually have the human do what they're good at, make decisions, prioritize, tweak, and not do what a computer is good at, reading through countless logs, looking for fine patterns, and things like that. So this area really works at partnering with the core capabilities of others at our lab. Again, the statistician, the AI, machine learning data scientist, and bringing them to areas we care about. Next area I wanted to cover, or actually, Jess, are you? Oh, if you're still there, Jess, I'm not seeing you in the. So the next area is assessments and experimentation. I mentioned this briefly at the beginning, but assessments and experimentation is a really fun hands-on team. What they're doing here is looking at how we can help a private company, a government sponsor better understand the systems they have today. So we might go to a university campus, we might go to a government facility, we might go to a commercial power entity. And those are sorts of the things that we have done, actually. We've done quite a bit of work with commercial power and helping critical infrastructure understand their risks and their cybersecurity posture. So that requires a couple different skill sets, right? That requires the cyber assessment and evaluation. Can you pen test? Do you know how to do a red team? But it also requires the domain knowledge. And so whatever the engineering field that is, it's very important to combine the cyber with the domain. And I think this is very easy to say and very hard to do. That's something that really requires that partnership. So you could be a mechanical engineer or a petroleum engineer or an electrical engineer. And it's a very important role because a cybersecurity person might come in and say, oh, just unplug that so we can do a forensic analysis. Well, if you unplug that, the whole plant stops. And in point of fact, that backs up the supply chain and that has a compounding effect. So domain knowledge is crucial when we go beyond IT into operational technology. And this team really marries up the domain knowledge with the cybersecurity knowledge so we can do assessments and evaluation. This is also where I mentioned our experimentation teams. Experimentation is something that, because again, we're an Office of Science lab, it's really important to have confidence in our results. So whether you look at the power labs you have or the other test beds and various capabilities you have, that's exactly the sort of thing we use to evaluate the component, but more importantly than just evaluating the component, it's in context. What we want to do is make sure that when we analyze a Siemens relay or some device, we understand how it works in the real world. That fidelity is crucial in delivering an actionable, relevant answer. Because if you just look at something on a bench top, you can evaluate that component very well, but you may not understand how that works in the real world deployed into a real system. So our expertise here is really a system of systems approach, where we look at things in context and we look at the holistic picture so that we can do the experimentation to answer a basic research question or a very applied, I wonder what happens if this gets plugged in, right? You can look at all of that if you've got the research foundations. Jess had some power outage, so she's going to be offline for a moment.
I'm back, actually. I apologize,
Hey,
folks.
you're back just in time. All right, would you like to talk about the next two?
Certainly. So David comes at this from the more research side. That's his background. He is awesome there. My background is a little more on the applied side. So I come at this, especially the secure software and architecture slide that we're going to talk about now, and I think mission support is next up. We come at this from a little bit more of an applied, how do we help make the world a better place at a very high level, but then how do we do that specifically for the sponsors, for the systems that we're talking about, whether that's creating some kind of custom monitoring system for working on anything from the power grid to a satellite to just the custom systems that we use for some of our basic science and testing systems. All of that requires unique software, unique architectures. Our group also focuses on how do you make those things? How do you make them securely? How do we make sure that whatever we're doing, that we know where it comes from, we know what's in it, and we can ensure that it is secure. And that includes some of the specialized diagnostic and monitoring tools. It gets down into the hardware layer where we're talking about specific GPU instantiations where we're using the powers of the computing to enable us to apply security in a unique and different way. And a lot of my team are these folks. They're the ones that are down there up to their elbows in the servers, sitting down at the benches, pulling out the soldering station. Okay, let's make this happen. Okay, slide, I think. And then on the mission support and analysis, when we go out and work with our partners or with our sponsors out in the government, a lot of times they don't necessarily always have the expertise that they need to make something happen. So I refer to this as we're going to help them fish. We're going to do something for them. In this case, I think the picture down there is talking about CPP and CRIS, we go out and help the Department of Energy monitor some of the different remote sites that they've got and look at the broader level view. What is the network doing at that high level? Are there actions that are being taken across the entire nation that need to be looked into a little bit better? But we also then are out there attempting to help them. Okay, let's show them what this means. Okay, we're going to help them in the real-time mission, but we're also going to say, okay, well, how does this affect your overall system? And what can we help you do to make it better? Because that is always the end goal, is how do we make this better? Yes, we can build things, we can monitor things, but we've got to have a path forward. And helping our sponsors find that path forward is something that I think the national labs offer very uniquely. And a big part of that is because we have trust. We've got the ability to go out there and say, hey, we don't have an axe to grind. We're not a big company. We don't have a product. We're coming in there as a trusted partner and saying, hey, we're here for you, and this is how we suggest we can make this situation better. And mission support and analysis does a lot of that type of work as well. Okay.
So I just wanted to share with you, I really thought it was worthwhile to go through a variety of the projects and the areas we work on, but we also have the opportunity to take money and actually invest it in areas that we think are important. And we call that LDRD, Laboratory Directed Research and Development. And that's important because that means if you come to work here, you can actually propose ideas and if they get accepted, work on the project of your dreams and actually see that come to fruition. And so I think that's important to point out. But one of the guiding objectives that we have for our laboratory is autonomic cyber resilience for critical infrastructure. This is cool for a couple of reasons, but it's right in the title. One is critical infrastructure. Now more than ever, our national security depends on our critical infrastructure. And that critical infrastructure is complex and robust, but also susceptible to attack. And so whether you're looking at a petroleum plant, a refinery, natural gas distribution line, or of course, the Eastern Interconnector Western Area Power Grid, those are complex systems that require protection. So what we're doing is acknowledging the importance of those, but then looking at really the cutting edge of cyber defense and looking at autonomic cyber resilience. How do we make it so that the system can defend itself, can continue to evolve and move so that the adversaries have a hard time getting a foothold? And this is really an exciting area that we're investing in and moving toward so that we can make our nation more secure. But again, pulls from all those various skill sets and needs. And so it's a really fun topic I just wanted to throw out there for you guys to consider. And so we would see collaboration from external partners, new hires, et cetera, to be able to fulfill this objective. So a couple more slides on how we engage, but I wanted to point out, as I mentioned before, we engage with industry. We have a major office in Seattle where we actually have now 200 staff nearly who work for P&L, but from Seattle. We also have a very small team in Portland, a pretty good sized team in DC. And so now we have people working remotely. Jess works all the way from Pullman, right? So we have researchers who are all over the country, and we can leverage that, right? It's not only great for them, it's great for us because we can leverage their relationships with the industry and partners in the area. And so we work with industry, as I mentioned, but we also work with academia in terms of doing collaborations with WSU, with the Energy Center, and then with government, where we actually can almost intern government employees, bring them on board so they can learn what we do and how we collaborate. And then workforce development, whether it's helping our own staff, maybe bringing up our own staff so that they can continue to get the skills they need, whether it's going to a university or a certification, but how do we work with partners to help us improve? And so it's nice to see the various areas where we partner and collaborate. Finally, the call to action. Well, I'd really encourage you guys to look at jobs.pnl.gov. That's where both internships and full-time employment is. We also have computing resources for a lot of the computing that we've been talking about just now. We're very keen to always do joint research and development, whether that's for National Science Foundation or Department of Energy. We definitely explore collaborations that your professor or you guys yourselves would be a part of. Of course, internships for grads and undergrads. We have a great program for undergraduates. So if you are an undergrad or if you know of any undergraduates, please share with them. We absolutely take undergrads. And then staff positions. We're always hiring. We're hiring for computing, for cyber, for artificial intelligence, machine learning, data scientists, but also electrical engineers, power engineers, catalysis. And there's really a variety of jobs out there that I can't do justice to, but I really want to point out the opportunities are available if you go to jobs.pnl.gov.
And these are all ongoing even through COVID. We brought on several interns this summer. We're hiring now. COVID has not stopped this.
And here are those opportunities with more detail: undergrad, post-bac, master's, PhD, postdoc. We've got a variety of options that'll suit you. Really encourage you to follow up with us, and hopefully you've got a bunch of questions queued up. And happy to answer day in the life. You know, what is it actually like? And, you know, what's the Tri-Cities like? Not that different from Pullman, but depending on where you are, you could be a remote student right now, right? So happy to answer any sort of questions about work life as well as the work at PNL. So with that, let's turn it over to questions. Who wants to go first?
If anybody would like to ask your question, you can unmute yourself.
We are hoping internships are local, but yes, we will have internships for summer 2021. We're hoping they're local, but if they aren't, they'll be remote. And if you were asking, could I do remote? We absolutely can. We can definitely accommodate that for the right person. That is a great question about how do you get involved with projects as a new P&L employee. That is definitely something we're working on. Our onboarding process, I have to be honest with you, has gotten a lot better because of the remote work. We used to bring people in tranches and sit them down, and they went through some training, and then they went to work in their real job. And that was almost disconnected. Now we really have paid a lot of attention to how does someone in New Jersey feel integrated and connected. And so we've really improved our processes, and it's a work in process, but I'm really pleased to see that silver lining come out of the isolation and quarantining. So I will say it's very important to network and be an advocate for yourself. If you are a junior staff member, you're going to join a high-performing team. You're going to prove your work by doing what's assigned to you, and you're going to make a name for yourself as a very solid software engineer, electrical engineer, so on. And then you'll learn the ropes and learn the experience. If you're a bit more senior, you're going to come with your strengths and expertise, but then you're going to need to start networking right away. So you will have a mentor, and you'll have a line manager, a team lead, who will help you kind of advertise yourself and make connections. But I will say this is a place where that network and connections are vital, because you're going to have a pick of opportunities. Even as a junior staff, there are going to be more opportunities and more projects than you could ever do in your whole life. So you can say yes to the first thing, or you can find people you like working with, or you can find problems you love working on, or all of the above. But all of that requires knowing what's out there. And the way you do that, frankly, is by communicating. Now, you can do it over Teams, you can do it over the phone, you can do it over email, but really you want to make sure you understand your strengths, you can advocate for them, and then you can find people who need those strengths. And I think that will serve you well really wherever you go. That's a great question.
And
You
I
know, I
will
think
add to that,
the
make sure that
pasta and all that's mostly vegetables.
I think we got an unmuted Cook.
it's getting me hungry. I'm ready for lunch. The other thing that I'm going to add to what David was saying there about getting involved with projects, make sure you're communicating regularly with your mentor so that that they know you're interested in going out there and trying new things. Because I've currently got, I think, 3 different folks that I'm mentoring, and everybody's kind of at a different level. There are some folks who just want to focus on the project that they've been given. They're brand new to this. And then there's others where I'm out there actively working with them to say, okay, let's do presentations. Let's get you involved with other groups. So make sure your
Have
mentor
2
knows
small
your
pieces
level.
of meat.
And yeah, it's a lot of it does come down to you. If you're the type who just wants to sit back and let your boss lead, I don't know that the lab would be the best place for you. You've got to take an active interest in your own career.
Great comment. I think we might still have an open mic, but the next question is a great one too. We absolutely hire and intern international students. And it does depend on the skill set and the job, but we will say right in the job posting what jobs are available for anyone, what jobs require U.S. Citizenship and perhaps a clearance, but we have all of that. Again, as an Office of Science lab with that huge diversity I mentioned at the beginning, we absolutely have many international employees working at the lab actively.
And I think we missed a question that came in a little bit earlier, David. It was, how big is the team at the main facility? And I was trying to think, I don't think I know.
Well, we now, I think, are up to 4,700 staff. And I know we have about 200 at Seattle, a little less, and less than that. I'd say, I'm going to guess and say over 4,000 people here in the Tri-Cities, and the rest scattered across the country, about that. And then, of course, Hanford is here, and so there's maybe up to 10,000 people working out there on a given day. So we have traffic, which really makes your commute maybe 4 minutes longer. But it is a nice core. You saw the photos, and yeah, it definitely feels like a college campus compared to some national labs that very much do not feel like that. So I like us for the luck of our buildings and things like that. I'm not sure I understand the question about control system applications. We absolutely have need for control system expertise, both control system optimization, theory, and application, say in a power system context. But yes, we have a huge group. We like to say, the largest concentration of power system PhDs in North America in our lab, and that's true. We have an incredible strength in transmission power systems, and that spills on down to buildings, distribution, and foundational control. So yes, we absolutely have opportunities for control system applications. Internships last as long as you want. Traditional answer is 10 weeks. But I like to have them go longer. And I'll just tell you, as a project manager, I would love an internship in the spring or fall, because everyone interns in the summer, and that's great. But then you have this rush to do summer. It would be awesome to intern year round or to have an off-season intern. But traditionally, it's the summer and it's 10 weeks. But we also have, again, research associate appointments and post-bac appointments, which are typically 2 years, where it's a really great opportunity to get a real job, try out the lab, see if you like it before you commit full-time. And depending on your domain, some PhDs use post-bacs or post-PhD postdocs, some don't, but there's plenty of them at the lab who do. Or if you're finishing up your schooling, I really recommend you prioritize schooling. But if you want a job, you can work while getting your degree. But I do recommend finishing up that degree first if you at all can. It's cleaner.
It takes a certain level of insanity to attempt to get
Try
your
to have it
degree and
all.
work. Yeah.
Another good question. I think it really depends on the field. What are differences for peoples with bachelor's, master's, and PhDs? Really depends on the field. I think reality, for example, in cybersecurity is we have people with a high school degree and a ton of practical experience, and we have people who got those PhDs. And so what I will say definitively is you are not judged on credentials, you're judged on work product. I have a master's graduate who far outperforms most PhDs any day of the week. So you really are judged on the merits here. What does matter is necessarily long-term promotion and things like that, but that's going to be true anywhere, right? If you have a bachelor's versus a master's, you're going to get paid more with a master's, right? You might be able to get in a little bit higher. That's going to be true here too. But I do not feel like there are any ceilings or limitations based on your degree. There really are always exceptions to that rule. So I think I would personally recommend a master's degree so that you demonstrate expertise in a particular area versus a bachelor's. But we hire bachelor's, master's, and PhD. So if you're in grad school, any time is a good time to get a job.
Yeah. And some of that may vary across even individual fields.
Yeah.
Over on my team, Prevent and Protect, we're more applied. I've got a lot more bachelor's than I've got a PhD. I think I may be the only PhD on my
Yeah.
team, actually. Whereas on the more research side of things, the foundational computation, the foundations of cybersecurity type teams, those are much heavier on masters and PhDs. So it varies widely.
Yeah. Thanks, Jess. What do you think on the next question, Jess?
Do we have access to tools, resources, and training? Yes. I would say that a lot of that is still tribal knowledge, which we're working on improving. But as a new employee, and this was 10 years ago, I think. Yeah, about 10 years ago, I was amazed at the access that I had to things like just background tools like Cost Estimator, which gives us an idea of, okay, well, I'm planning out a project. What's my budget going to look like? So everybody at the lab has access to things like that. Training ongoing is always encouraged. We have weekly PM lunch and learns like this one that we use across our group, which are across our division. Those are awesome. However, personally, I prefer to bring my junior staff up kind of in stages. I don't expect my brand new staff coming on as a SNE1 to be proposing multi-million-dollar projects. That's a little bit much. But working with the staff, I think, is one of our strong points, helping grow the staff and okay, let's start them off on a smaller project, internally lab led. Okay, we're good, solid there. You're developing your leadership skills, you're developing your tools. Now let's keep stepping them up until the point where, yeah, they are leading international multi-million-dollar projects. It's awesome to watch that growth. David, is that kind of what you're seeing?
That's very well said. And I just want to reinforce, really, there are opportunities from day one. We would not expect a brand new hire to be the project manager and principal investigator of a project, right? We are going to give you the support and help, probably by partnering you with someone, a professional PM, a senior PI. So really you can learn the ropes, because there is a lot of institutional knowledge, and you learn that by asking questions and observing someone. So those opportunities are real, and we'll probably address that by putting you on a team so you can learn from them. It's a good question too. Time for one more question. Yeah. That's a great question. So yes, what I want from a college grad is critical thinking. Even from a PhD, I want you to demonstrate you've thought about something very hard for a long time, for way too long, and you can write about it and you can defend it, but it may not be something you ever touch ever again. And that's okay. I want you to prove that you're a critical thinker, and with a master's or PhD, you can do research. You will learn so much from your job. I'm the hugest fan of universities. I got a PhD because I loved school so much, I just wanted to keep going, right? You learn critical thinking and domain knowledge. You learn how to do your job at work. And so don't ever be afraid, however old you ever get, to reinvent yourself and to try new things. You will never stop learning here, I guarantee it. Also, what's amazing at PNNL is we have a lot of people who've been here 30 years or longer, and they have had 3 or 4 careers. Whereas in Seattle, you might get a new job every 2 to 3 years and jump around. If you want to do that, great. I do not want to do that. But you can do that here. You can be a project manager. You can be in IT. You can go be in EMSL supporting huge scientific instruments. Then you can go into national security. Then you can go in the environmental sciences. You can constantly reinvent yourself at your pace. On the flip side, if you want to be an expert in that one thing for your whole life, we need that too. So there is a ton of freedom there. So I think that was a great question. And so if you have not touched on cybersecurity, but you do have real-time digital simulator or network modeling experience, man, lots of people could use that experience. So I definitely think what I want to see as a hiring manager is your ability to communicate and critically think the knowledge of the domain or the specific technology. Of course you can pick up. You've proved that by getting a degree from WSU.
And if you think of questions later, I know we've got about a minute left here. Please feel free to reach out to David or myself. I very much enjoy working with the students, and I am literally 10 minutes away from you guys if you're on campus in Pullman. So please reach out if you have other questions too.
And any of you are welcome to email david@pnnl.gov. It's just david@pnnl.gov. I'd be happy to follow up. I'd happy to connect you to those in your areas of interest, and jessmith@pnnl.gov. So please feel free to. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That was fantastic. That was really good. I think it's encouraging because it feels like sometimes with what's happening in the world, there might not be job opportunities, and the way you guys presented about all the opportunities at PNNL, that's pretty exciting. I think if I was a student, I'd be, encouraged about there's jobs out there. So, hey, if you all enjoyed this, please come again in 2 weeks for our next Lunch and Learn. And thanks for being here, and go Cougs.
To learn more about the Lunch and Learn with Industry webinar series, follow the link in the description, and we'll see you next time on Lunch and Learn with Industry.